As Noah has reminded me, it is the 35th anniversary of the seminal piece of cinema, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze.
Yeah.
And when we say 35 years, I mean, it literally just turned 35, March 22nd, 1991, for this all-time classic martial arts film.
Yeah. There's not really much of a secret behind the Ooze. We kind of all know what it did already, and even they know what it did already. So I don't know why this is called The Secret of the Ooze. There's no secret, but
there's a lot of mysteries in this film.
Yeah.
So why did you ask me to watch this movie?
Well, so back in the year of our Lord, 1991, on March 22nd, a small child named Eric Dolanquist turned 8 years old. March 22nd is my birthday. This movie came out on my birthday, and I still remember seeing it and loving it, because you know what? When you're 8 years old and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Secret of the Ooze comes out on your birthday, it's a good birthday, you know? So we had a great time. I've watched this movie so many times since it came out. And I don't regret that. Even going back and watching it now. I watched it this afternoon, actually, to prep for this. Even though I have the whole thing basically memorized, I went back and watched it again. And this movie is it's so dumb, but I love it so much, and I can't wait to dive into every aspect of this movie. It was a successful movie. It was the second highest grossing independent film of all time at that time, trailing only behind Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1. So did well at the box office, did great for an independent film, which was kind of shocking. I'm sure we'll get into the puppetry, which is just awesome in this. The suits are incredible.
It is really good. You know, I will say, one of the things that stood out to me the most, was that the practical effects hold up surprisingly well.
They really do. That's
is
Jim Henson Company, you know?
Yeah, the actors are able to move pretty darn well and convincingly, and do actually a lot of stunts in the suits themselves, so it looks pretty realistic. And then on top of the animatronics and everything they do for the faces do express quite a bit of emotion. So I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I haven't seen this movie since I was a child.
Oh,
so
really? Wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's been probably.
You don't watch it every year like I do?
So first off, I'm younger than you, so I would have been 4 when this movie came out.
You weren't into Vanilla Ice like we all were back then.
I would have been 4.5. So I definitely didn't see this when it came out, and I did see it later. But I was never also really into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a kid. I had a few of the toys and, watched the cartoon, but this wasn't really a focus of my childhood. I do remember watching it, but it wasn't, my number one show or anything like that. So yeah, it was fun for me to go back and do this. And I think what really stuck out to me right off the bat was that I didn't realize that Golden Harvest had made this movie. And that was very surprising, because I have watched a lot of Golden Harvest films. And for those of you who don't know, Golden Harvest is a very famous Hong Kong production company and distribution company. And they have done hundreds of films, and including really, really important films. They've distributed some very important films in the wuxia genre, like Touch of Zen. They were responsible for creating Once Upon a Time in China, which was basically the series that launched Jet Li's career in the early 90s. And so for them to cross over into an American audience and an English language film is pretty important. And also it goes to show why a lot of the action sequences and I think the stunt work and everything is so good, because these were the people who were working with Jackie Chan, Jet Li. I mean, this was kind of the bread and butter of Hong Kong cinema. So that's really fun.
Yeah, on the American side too, you've got Ernie Rice Jr. and Ernie Rice Sr. And you don't see Ernie Rice Sr. in this because I believe he's in one of the suits. So he does some stunt work, or he was involved in the stunts. He was in one of the suits in the first movie. But Ernie Rice Jr. was in one of the suits in the first movie, and then he starred as Kino in the second one, their kind of young sidekick.
And he was in Surf Ninjas, which you've also reviewed.
I was about to say, yeah, the Ernie Rice Jr. Senior father-son combo was in Surf Ninjas. Yeah, one of my other favorite movies of all time. And so, it's fun to see him in this. The stunt work is obviously great because they were great. And it's neat to go back and kind of just appreciate it from that perspective. Because as a kid, you're just like, oh, they're jumping around, they're hitting things. You just appreciate it for the action. Now you can go back and be like, okay, that's impressive, and it's so impressive they can do it in the suits.
Yes.
And I think I want to talk about the suits specifically for a little while, but I think first we should talk about a little bit about the how this movie got made the way it was made, because and this is something I remember very keenly. I guess you wouldn't, because you would have been even younger, but the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live action film kind of shocked a lot of people with how dark and gritty and violent it was, because and that of course goes back to how the comics originally were. The comics originally were dark and gritty and violent, but by the time the first live action film had come out, there was the cartoon, right? And some of the video games, much more lighthearted, geared for kids in every way, shape, and form. So, and that was the Ninja Turtles that was in the cultural zeitgeist. Only the big fans that had read the comics in the late 80s knew this other side of the Turtles, really. I certainly didn't as a kid. So seeing that first one was like, man, it's like really violent. They're swearing. It's dark and gritty. And like, what is this? This isn't the Turtles that I know, And so there was this big public backlash at how violent it was and all that. And so the second one was coming out, and they had Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, who came back to write this one. They created the Ninja Turtles. They wrote it with Todd W. Langan, and they wanted to again push for it to be dark and gritty. And the studio basically said, no way, that's not the Turtles people know. It's got to be a kids movie this time.
Also,
like
making
through a kids
making
movie.
fucking radioactive Ninja Turtles gritty is just weird.
It was done in kind of a satirical way, but it was dark and gritty back then. And the original, I did read some of the original comics like later on, and I had Teenage Ninja Turtles issue 2. And until I think I traded it with a friend in grade school or something like that, some stupid thing like that. But like, so I did read a couple of those early comics, but I was just so brainwashed by the children's television Ninja Turtles, which I loved. I was a gigantic Ninja Turtles fan. I had the toys. This series, in terms of my like 80s toy, 80s, early 90s toy like tier list, right? For me, I think number 1 was always Transformers, but number 2 was absolutely Ninja Turtles. Number 3 is probably G.I. Joe, because I loved all the vehicles and things. But number 2 is Ninja Turtles, and I loved all those toys. I loved the show, the cartoon, everything like that. It was always very exciting because I lived in rural Wisconsin, and we didn't get Fox out there, and Fox was the only channel that Ninja Turtles cartoon was on, and so we could only watch it live. We went to my grandma's house in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And that was it. Otherwise, we had to like rent a video or something like that, I remember there was a Pizza Hut promotion where part of the promotion is you got a VHS with a couple episodes of the Ninja Turtles on it. It was The Great Baldini, I think was the name of the episode. As somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. And we watched that VHS to death, man. And so I was hugely into the Turtles. So when the second one came out, it was much more like the Turtles I knew. I was much happier with this version of the Turtles. But it was so funny because there was this huge, there was this huge public backlash against the first Turtles for being too violent and gritty. And then there was this reverse backlash against this movie for being too kid friendly, where it's like they don't even, this is known as like the movie where they don't use their weapons really, and we'll get into that a little bit more later because there's crazy stuff around that. But like, it kind of, so it reminds me of Star Wars fans in a way where you'll just never please them because different segments of fans want it to be their way and you can never make it everybody's way, So it was funny seeing the success of these movies, but also the backlashes that came from the fandom after each one too. But I didn't care about any of that because I was a little kid and I just liked the Ninja Turtles,
Yeah, and this is very lighthearted, and I think that's part of the charm is that it does have, these comedy stylings throughout where you get to see the different turtles' carefree personalities in different ways. And
it's really great.
They're making quips while they're fighting, and like you said, there's not really any blood, and they're not really using their weapons, or they're improvising funny weapons. Is probably
nobody really gets hurt. It's like you said, nobody really uses their weapons. The only time Leonardo uses his swords is to stick them in the ceiling so he can grab them and swing kick somebody. The only time Raphael uses his size during the entire film is to catch a flying piece of pizza. Donatello uses his bow staff for a broom. And then, to be fair, Donatello is the only turtle to use his weapons in combat in that movie. And then Michelangelo, the closest we get to the nunchucks is him using some sausage links and hitting people, scaring people, not even hitting people. He doesn't even hit people with them. He just scares them away.
Combat conquest!
If you want to look like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle while you sleep, then I would recommend the Manta Sleep Mask. Now, I look a little bit like Donatello. Mine's purple since it's one of the Manta Sleep Pro masks, but I'm not going to be fighting any crime with it because critically, it blocks out 100% of the light. I wear this thing to bed every night, guys. It is insanely comfortable. It helps me go to sleep. It has memory foam eye cups that can be moved up or down to fit your face or right to left with Velcro. And then it also has cooling gel on the inside of the straps. This thing never gets hot. It's also ideal for side sleepers, if that's how you prefer to sleep at night. This thing also is just incredibly breathable. As you can see, it's ventilated. Like I said, never been sweaty in this whatsoever, and you can just throw it straight in the washing machine and let it air dry flat, and it's nice and clean. So Manta Sleep also offers a variety of other products, including ones with headphones if you like to listen to music or maybe even our podcasts as you fall asleep at night. It'll connect via Bluetooth to your phone or another device. So they have tons of options. The Manta Pro is utterly fantastic. I promise you, you guys are going to love this product. And you guys can go to mantasleep.com and use code LFN. Of course, that stands for Last Free Nation, to go ahead and unlock 10% off your purchase. That's mantasleep.com/LFN to get your Manta Sleep mask. And thanks to Manta Sleep for sponsoring our show, Nerd Legion.
I guess he does sort of throttle somebody with
I guess I
another
do find that very
soft
odd
but
because
still.
they use their weapons in the animation. So why can't you just have bloodless weapons use in
there's an easy
in
answer to
this
that,
film?
Monty. There's an easy answer to that. And if you were a big Turtles watcher like I was, you would know immediately, is that in the cartoon, all the foot soldiers were robots. And so you can poke and slash
That's
and hack
true.
up robots to your heart's content on a cartoon. But in the movies, they were real flesh and blood people. So you can't do the same thing. So yeah, that's how they got away with using the weapons in the show, is that all the foot soldiers were robots.
I forgot about that, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So there's the answer. But about the weapons, there's this hilarious part of this where the movie and Turtles in general was just ridiculously censored in the UK specifically because there was these crazy laws that were happening at the time. I have it up here. What were they called again? They were called like the UK Criminal Justice Act of 1988, the offensive weapons category. They dictated what weapons could and couldn't be shown on screen. And there was a huge list of like stereotypical ninja weapons with this, like hand claw, hollow kubaton, foot claw, shurikens, sarigama, nunchucks. Like it goes on a little bit, but it's
just so funny because like nunchucks are a
for
meme
ninja
weapon
weapons
anyway.
specifically. I know, right? Like, but they had a hate weapon for the stereotypical ninja weapons. So they had to cut the scene. Infamously, they cut the scene in the UK version of this film where Michelangelo used his cold cut nunchucks. They censored that even.
It's sausages.
They were very against ninjas over there. The show was actually called Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles in the UK. They weren't even allowed to use the word ninja because ninja was too associated with violence for it to be a kid's thing, Monty. You can't say ninja. Think of the children. So And of course, like everything was very heavily edited the nunchucks out of the intro and all that. And that lasted until I think 1990 or the early 90s. It must have been a little bit later in the early 90s, because this movie was like famously and hilariously censored in the UK. But just in general, they kind of self-censored themselves by not really using the weapons, but they other than like props.
This is so funny. Like, it's so specific. And why those
I know.
weapons as opposed to, why would you censor? Like, was this just for, do you know if this is just for censoring in kids movies, or could adult movies, or if they had a certain rating? Probably they could still have it, right?
I don't know all the details for sure, but it seemed pretty broad. And they also banned a bunch of things like butterfly knives and like a lot of the big comical weapons that you'd see in movies that no one would really actually, use very often in real life. But if you go back and look at the history of the BBC, there's all sorts of crazy censorship stuff that's happened over the years with that, but which is fun to go back and read about. But yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Secret of the Ooze were specifically victims of these laws at the time. But again, we didn't get a lot of weapon action in this movie, anyway, which again, I didn't even notice that as a kid. It didn't even occur to me that they weren't really using their weapons. I just remember, liking it. But do you want to talk about the costumes real quick?
Sure.
Dive into that. So, there was a big change from the costumes in the first movie to the second movie, where in the first movie, the actors were able to sort of see out of the mouth when it opened, which led to like the hilarious image. Hopefully we can put on the screen now for you all to look at, where you can see a second row of teeth deep inside Donatello's mouth, which is terrifying. I posted this earlier in our chat. You saw that, right?
No, I
Monty, go back and look. Go look at our Nerd Legion chat, and you'll see this famous image. It's horrifying. But so
oh
they.
My God.
I know it's literally some eldritch horror stuff going on there, but it's awesome. But so they were like, never again. We don't want anyone to be able to freeze their frames, press pause at just right time on their VHS player, and see that horrifying thing. And so the answer apparently was in the second movie, the people in the suits just couldn't see at all. They had to learn all of their choreography blind by heart. It took I've seen, again, this is all internet research here, but upwards of 30 takes per scene to get things correct. The person operating the puppetry that moved all the facial things also was wired via earpiece into the actor in the suit, so they could give them little cues and things like that. So even though they couldn't see, they could kind of hear what they maybe should be doing at the time if they were unsure. But so that whole thing, to have everything look as natural as it did, with where the turtles' eye lines are and everything, the range of emotions that they show on the turtles in this movie, like the puppetry was just incredible. But you got to feel for those guys jumping around blind in the suits,
except for Splinter. But
well, I mean, he did as well as he could. Voice acted by Kevin Clash, who was and maybe still is, I'm not sure, Elmo for many, many, many years on Sesame Street, like 700 something episodes. Played Splinter, was also Ogra in the Dark Crystal as well. So some very, very famous voice actors. The voice actor for Toka and Razar was Frank Welker, who you might know as Megatron from the Transformers animated show. They got all-star cast for sure.
Yeah, I think it really works. It's shocking to hear that they couldn't even see, because those
Apparently
fight scenes are very well choreographed and they feel actually surprisingly natural. Every time you think that these guys can't move in these suits, they seem perfectly athletic in them. So I was very pleasantly surprised with the quality of the action in this.
I don't know how you do all that rolling and flipping and stuff without just destroying these suits on a daily basis too, because a lot of times the material you make suits for movies and things like this isn't exactly made to be durable. So the fact that they can make it look so good and have it hold up in these combat scenes is amazing. It really is like a feat of engineering that these suits performed as well as they did,
Yeah, and like we said, the animatronic facial expressions too really work a lot of the time. The range is really good. obviously it feels like animatronics, but it was the early 90s, and it does hold up surprisingly well. Again, it except for Splinter's face. That does not hold up well.
Well, I mean, you take what you can get, right? It still looked okay, That one looked very Muppet, but nobody cared. I didn't care back then. The audience that movie was geared towards did not care at all. We were all just impressed by how the turtles looked, and we didn't care about any of that other stuff. We've been watching some 80s fantasy films on this show, and so I believe David Warner, the famous David Warner, was in a good amount of those over the years. He was in a good amount of a lot of different stuff.
I was actually really surprised to see David Warner because he's great.
He is great. Yeah.
He's really, he's a classically trained actor, and it comes across that way in terms of his diction and his poise. He was also very famously in Tron.
Yes, that's right. He was Sark.
He's the master program. He's like the main villain in Tron.
Dillinger,
and it's fun to see him in this role because he plays a lot of villains in his career, because he has this rather dour, severe look, and he has this really powerful, deep voice, and he does come across as kind of villainous a lot of the time. He's the main villain in Time Bandits. He's awesome in Time Bandits. He's so good.
Yeah.
So I'm a big David Warner fan, but I was considering, like I said, I haven't seen this movie. The last time I saw this movie was before I knew who David Warner was. So I did not know he was in this movie. So when he showed up, I was quite pleased.
Yeah. So funny thing, you mentioned him, usually being cast as a villain. And that's absolutely true. And it was almost true for this movie too, because the original intent was to have him play Baxter Stockman, who's this scientist that turns into this like fly mutant. And in the show, he has this army of like robots called Mousers, but they couldn't figure out how to do all these like robots as the main fodder villains for this, and so they brought back Shredder because originally, and then they converted Baxter Stockman into Professor Jordan Perry, but they had David Warner still play this role, so they actually swapped villains. Eastman and Laird didn't want to bring back Shredder, the story goes. They wanted him to just be dead and maybe like tease that he could come back in like a third movie or something, but no, they brought him back in this one and converted David Warner to maybe not like, he's kind of a hero, he's kind of also the source of the problems, but he's also he also tries to help solve them. So he is heroic in this one, but it is fun to see him in that role for sure.
I was also really surprised at who they cast as Shredder, because it's François Chau.
I know, right?
Also, I really like
great.
him as an actor.
Yeah.
And DoA, I really do not understand. I love him. Okay. I love him.
Okay.
He's been in a lot of stuff I really enjoy. He's actually been, most recently, I was surprised that he was in Ghost of Tsushima. He's actually one of the main characters in Ghost of Tsushima as a voice actor. And his voice is so distinct. He has this really like powerful, deep voice. And why did they not use his voice in this?
Didn't they?
No, he's voiced by a guy named David McCharron.
Really?
So what was so weird to me, DoA, is François Chau is not a large man. He's like an average guy. And so he looks rather ridiculous in the Shredder outfit because the helmet is so big and he's just kind of a normal build and he doesn't look very intimidating. And then they don't use his voice, which is, in my opinion, his most distinctive aspect.
Yeah, no kidding. Huh.
So to me, it was just a weird casting choice. If anything, I would have gotten some like giant guy to play Shredder and then use François Chau as the voice because his voice is so awesome. But yeah, it was very weird, weird decision.
You know what's also crazy? I just noticed as I was looking through this, but wrestler Kevin Nash was the guy in the Super Shredder costume at the end.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you do, and then you use François Chau's voice.
Yeah, I guess so. That's there's some wild decisions in this one, but that's interesting. Yeah, they changed Aprils between movie 1 and movie 2 as well. The April in this movie is played by Paige Turco, who, again, like, I think I failed to remember the name of the actress in the first movie. She did great in that. But Paige Turco, I think, is perfect for the April she needs to be in this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I know a lot of people didn't like the actor change, but I feel like for this movie, she was the right person to be the right April, because it's two different Aprils, really, right? Again, we're kind of moving away from the more dramatic. This is more the cartoon April, so I think she was a great choice for that too. As far as like being sort of the person to be the human reacting to all the turtle shenanigans,
To be fair, all she really had to do was basically just make her OU face every scene. And
yeah, I mean, well, no, she was investigating TGRI and all that. She was out there, on the beat investigating things, hiring foot soldiers to be one of the grips for her news operation. She probably didn't hire that person. I don't know.
Yeah, the foot soldier thing is just super funny in this movie too. I mean, look, this movie has some funny action scenes. It is lighthearted, and it mercifully is only an hour and 20 minutes long. But if we actually start to investigate the plot, it's a complete mess. By the way, I love just the. I was totally into the intro of this movie. Where you have Reno with the pizza delivery just start to fight, and then the turtles show up. It's actually a really well done intro. Plus, you at the start of the film, it really does a good job, I think, of visually capturing the spirit of New York City in the early 90s. Like, I love the skyline shots and the shots of the city, and you definitely feel the New York vibes in this film, which is great. But at the start, I just think it's so funny that the turtles are in this store and there's like 50 burglars all in stockings. Why would there be 50 guys trying to rob one store?
They were robbing the whole mall at once, Monty. It was very ambitious.
Hilarious.
It was the crime of the century. I was very impressed. But it gave our turtles a chance to show off their personalities.
Can you imagine? It would be international news if like 50 dudes came and robbed one mall.
Beat up one pizza delivery guy along the way. I love it. But that just puts us right in cartoon territory. But I want to go back even farther than that, though, right? First of all, I do love the establishing shots of everybody eating pizza. I think that's great. It definitely sets the tone for everything.
It's really good.
But I forgot just how hilariously mean Kino is at the very beginning, where he's like, he walks out. I was like, Kino, geez, like, this is you're not a very heroic person right now. But like, he walks out to do his pizza delivery, and there's 3 girls standing there, and he's like, hey, which one of you lucky ladies gets to ride with me tonight? And of course, this is, they probably, most people probably wouldn't enjoy attention, like that in that way, but they turn him down. And his response is to go like, they say, dream on, Dweeb. And he says, okay, but when I do, I'll dream of something a little thinner. And I was like, Kino, oh my gosh. That's just mean, man. You're the one who you were hitting on them. They turned you down because you kind of came off like a sleazeball. And then you dropped that line on them. This is our young protagonist. I'm like, I don't know, Kino. I had very different thoughts about Kino this time around.
Hey, ladies. Which one of you lucky girls gets a ride with me tonight?
Dream on, dweeb.
Yeah, okay. But when I do, I'll dream of something a little thinner.
It was because also we fast forward a little bit, and he decides that just because he's delivered pizza to April a lot, it gives him the right to just walk into her apartment. He's like trying to just enter. Yep. He's like, April, you there? And he just tries to come in. I'm like, I'm concerned about Kino. There's some red flags here. I didn't notice this before, but I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, I'm a little bit. Kino
later
makes
on,
me
he
a little bit
actually
uncomfortable.
is trying to deliver a pizza to somewhere else, and then he brings it by to their place.
Yeah, it is a little bit uncomfortable, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. So my thoughts on Kino have changed, where he seems like kind of a little creep, honestly. And I love watching Ernie Rice Jr. act in things. Surf Ninjas, again, is one of my favorite movies, but I saw Kino in a new light today. And I'm like, well, maybe he thinks they have a close enough relationship that he can just walk in because they have such a pizza delivery relationship, which could be taken in a lot of ways, I guess. But I'm just saying he brings pizzas when they're ordered. But but yeah, just to be able to walk in, it was kind of a Seinfeld situation, maybe, you know, just walk in, everybody claps. But it did, like I said, it was a little bit concerning. But and also I love that he sees Raphael's foot sticking out from under the screen. When he's like, you know, he was saved by the turtles, you know, and then he has the suspicion that they're hiding out at April's place. So he comes in and he's like, he's just walking around examining her apartment. He's like, what are the nunchucks for? What's all this for? I bet they probably censored that in the UK too. But and then he sees Raphael's giant two-toed green foot sticking out from under the little, like, little wall thing, the little paper wall. And his plan is, I'm gonna go and stomp on this foot and see what happens. Like, what was he's like, there's a monster foot sticking out of there. What am I gonna do? I'm just gonna go stomp on it. Like, another red flag. Kino, I'm concerned about you, buddy. It all works out for him because he's lucky the turtles are friendly, but that could have ended a lot differently, you know.
Just throw them out the window. You know,
Yeah.
we know they're superior martial artists.
Yeah, but let's get back to the plot a little bit. So, you know, Kino's rescued.
What plot? Noah,
That's a great
question. You know, the worst part of this plot is that Shredder has no motivation, by the way.
Well, he's real angry. He doesn't like the wretched reptiles, all right?
He's real angry, which is the only thing we know. He's so angry he wants to get the Ooze to make his own soldiers to kill the turtles. But for what reason?
Because he doesn't like the turtles. What else do you need? My favorite part of the whole Shredder arc, though, is that initially everyone's like, we must remain secret. No one can know where our lair is. No one can know we exist. We hide in the shadows. To then him willingly confronting the turtles on stage at a Vanilla Ice concert. Like, Shredder, this kind of goes against your earlier modus operandi, if you will, you know? So I love Shredder's arc, that he goes from, you know, secretive villain to, you know, just comically confronting heroes at a Vanilla Ice.
I like how he
just
just shows up this movie after being dead and nobody really even questions it. We just go from they're trying to organize, the Foot Clan is trying to organize again, to he just rocks up, retakes control. Nobody gives a shit. And then, you know, the first thing he does, Doa? He goes right back to sharpening his helmet.
Well, yeah, it got damaged in the garbage truck. You know, I mean, it's pretty simple. They knocked him in a garbage truck. They thought he was smashed. He somehow survived. Kind of a little, you know, Star Wars trash compactor, you know, thing going on there, maybe. They dumped Shredder off in the garbage dump. He regained consciousness and came back home, you know? Yeah.
And then he had to sharpen his helmet, as you do, which is so ridiculous. Because he just takes it off and he just starts sharpening it on a grindstone.
I'd be so nervous if I was the guy playing Tatsu, his right-hand henchman. Because in a lot of movie framing, you need to be standing a lot closer together than you would in real life when you're talking to someone. And there are some wicked edges on that helmet. And he comes really close to slashing Tatsu's face when he's turning around and stuff. I was worried about Tatsu in this time when I watched it.
Especially because that helmet is comically large. It reminds me so much of Dark Helmet from Spaceballs. You guys watching it? Because it's way too big for his body, so it just looks really funny.
Well, so recently, you know, we covered One Piece Season 2 recently, which we applauded as a live action show that went all out with its adaptation of the cartoon. I feel like this movie qualifies as one of those too, where everyone is fully committed to making it exactly just a cartoon in live action. They don't skimp with the costuming, and that includes Shredder's big head. You know, I feel like they should have put a cape on him a little bit earlier. You know, he looks a little bit sillier with the purple onesie, you know, and the helmet. But you know, I do appreciate the commitment to the costume, you know. But so there's some Ooze out there. TGRI, the company that made the Ooze, accidentally is trying to get rid of the Ooze. One canister left. The Foot comes and takes it. I love how we have Professor Perry, you know, in the office, like, last canister, he's about to get rid of it. Foot comes in, kidnaps him, takes the Ooze. Then the turtles show up at the lab. And by this time, you'd imagine that the Foot Clan should be long gone. They got their prize. They're out. They're long gone. But no, they decided to come back and taunt the turtles with the can of Ooze and then have a fight over it, which they don't lose it, but they got kind of lucky there, you know? But I again, I watch it with a more critical eye this time, and I'm like, why didn't the Foot Clan just leave? They had everything they wanted. They just saw the turtles sneak in and like, oh, we love losing to those guys. So hey, you guys, there's turtles. You want to fight the turtles again? Okay, sure. What about this thing we have to bring back for Shredder? Don't worry about it. Taunt him with it, Then don't react when they run up and kick it out of our hands.
I think my favorite part of this movie that was extremely stupid was the plan to give the monsters, the mutated turtle and wolf, the donuts.
Yeah, with the ice cubes in it.
With the ice cubes in it, which that will change them back into their normal forms because they've been mutated by the ooze.
Right.
But the point is like, if you were in what context would someone who is about to fight another person willingly eat something that the person who's trying to kill them is giving them because it might be poison?
It was the 90s. People are a lot more trusting about food being given out back then. Halloween was very different, It was just part of the culture back then, all right?
You're like, I've come here to fight to the death. Would you like some donuts?
Yeah,
is the answer.
Well, I love that scene because it's so full cartoon where it's ridiculous. That it's not. There's no way this would ever work in real life. It's completely wacko, out the window, crazy, right? But even like when they're doing it, they're like, "Do you think they're going to go for it?" Yeah, sure. It's like it's comedy to me because it knows how ridiculous it is. And so of course it doesn't work, but like. I think it is funny that it's just part of it, right? Well, they eat some of it, but it doesn't work the way they wanted. My favorite Toka Razar part was back at the beginning before they get mutated, when Shredder's like, these were the two most vicious animals you could find, and they're like, yeah. And I'm like, have you ever heard of a zoo? I'm pretty sure if you went to you're the Foot Clan. There's zoos in New York. Go like grab a tiger or a gorilla or something, or like go grab like a truly dangerous animal, like a cone shell snail or a cobra or something, But no, they just went to like Central Park and found, I don't know if there's wolves in Central Park. I guess there are in this universe.
It looked like
you
a
just
husky.
grab one and a snapping turtle too. Are there a lot of snapping turtles in New York City? Who cares?
I guess
I guess the answer is who cares, really. There were on that day when the Foot Clan was out. Presumably, the Foot Clan had spread across the city looking for dangerous animals to bring home and mutate.
I also love the threat that they make, which is Toka and Razar, which are the monsters' names, right? They release them in some neighborhood and they're pulling up telephone poles and everything like that. And the next threat is, we'll release them in Central Park. And my response is, wouldn't that be less bad than them destroying they're just in a park,
right?
Man. What are they going to do in the park that they're weren't
easy
doing
to avoid there
on a city street?
Yeah, why wouldn't you put them in Times Square or something? I was thinking that same thing. This time with Central Park. I'm like, all the people who aren't
trees.
In Central Park. Yeah, I was surprised by that too. Also, if you go to the Professor Perry, who supposedly he messes with the mutagen to make them babies, right? To make sure their intellect is still infantile, that they don't mutate into older versions of themselves, presumably, which the turtles didn't. Why would they? But he intentionally made them infantile, right? Babies specifically, they keep saying, which I love the Shredder line, "They're babies." That's my favorite line in the whole movie. But
Mama. Get off me! Babies! They're babies!
Then later on, when they do turn Toka and Raza back to the animals, they aren't babies. They're like, that's a full-size snapping turtle on the ground there. Watch out,
did
Vanilla
look
Ice
like
fans.
A puppy.
And it looks certainly younger, but it's definitely not a baby. So I think, when Professor Perry says they're not stupid, they're infants, I think he was lying. Now I go back, I think he literally did engineer them to be stupid just to mess with Shredder.
That was the impression I got.
Yeah, I think that's like, I think if you really like think hard about this movie, which we all should be, of course, it does appear that they weren't actually babies. They were just stupid. So,
and you say that the turtles aren't stupid, but they walk into a trap knowing it's a trap, get caught in a net.
Oh,
and
well, they're
despite the
stupid in a
fact that
different way.
Leonardo has swords, they can't cut themselves out of a net.
You can reach them, all right? You can reach them. Going back slightly farther, first Ooze thing, I love when they walk into the lab and Michelangelo goes, it's like video games in 3D. And it was like, wow, this movie came out before there were 3D video games.
Look,
really.
if you
Or at
want a
least common.
cultural artifact, this has everything from the
Seriously.
90s. They
No
make
cell phones.
references to stuff that all of the references are to things like Wide World of Sports.
Yep. Ralph Nader.
Ralph Nader. They mentioned Donatello hilariously mentions Perestroika, which was the word that was used for Gorbachev's rebuilding of the Soviet Union, which was happening in the 80s. And
Michelangelo quotes Casablanca. All the kids love
that's so
Casablanca
much more
in the 90s.
relevant today, but the 90s references are just crazy.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I understand the references, but I can't. 35 years later, this would be completely incomprehensible to most people, I think, who are not around in the 90s to understand what the fuck these guys are talking about, or the things that that they are very actively referencing in this film.
Yeah, it was. But that was a very like Ninja Turtles of the time thing to do. They did that sort of thing all the time in the cartoons as well. It was very much like a product of its time in a lot of ways, with on the reference front. So that was very true to the cartoon, I feel like. And it's fun to hear that stuff now because you hear a lot of stuff you just haven't thought about in a long time, But again, like people calling each other on landline phones, it was a different world. Watching, like movie title agnostic. It is so interesting now going back and watching movies from that era because it really is a different world, like, technology wise, and culturally to a certain extent. But like people just had to function so differently back then.
And yet New York City looks exactly the same.
That I can't speak to as much. I've only been there a couple times.
I did think it was very funny too. One of the things that they reference in this is the abandoned City Hall station. So the layer that they go to in the subway, it is a replica of that. It looks smaller in the film than it does in real life, but they do a really good job. It's an awesome set, and it's an awesome piece of New York City architecture where down in Lower Manhattan in City Hall there's a very famous abandoned subway station that's been used in many films, everything, that has these fabulous like barrel vaulted ceilings and stained glass with light coming in from the surface. It's beautiful, and you can actually still go on tours of this, but it's not in use anymore. I think it has, if I remember correctly, it has something to do with the trains are no longer the right.
There was a big changeover that happened.
I think the trains are too long.
It wasn't the width? It wasn't the
no,
rail width?
because trains can still turn around in that station. I do know that if you're on like the end of the line on one of the subway lines, you can actually drive through that station still. So they can still send the trains through there. But I think it's like they're too long to stop at the platform, or the curvature doesn't allow them to stop there. But you can actually still take, they still offer tours. The city still offers tours of that subway station just as an exemplary piece of architecture. So it's fun to see that, because I think if you are familiar with New York, you probably know about that subway station or have taken a tour of it, and it's a nice reference point. It's still there, and you can still see it if you happen to be in New York City visiting. So it's cool. And they don't actually film it down there; they just make a set. But it is they're trying to draw from the inspiration, and like I said, it really does come across as very New York in feel and culture. And you get the accents and the feel of the city, and of course the pizza, right?
It's like this and Ghostbusters are the two movies I always go to where it's like, if I want to pretend I know what New York is like, I'll watch those, I don't know what New York is like. I grew up in Wisconsin.
What a sentence. If I want to know what New York is like, I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, and Ghostbusters.
It's lots of pizza. The accents, like you said. Here's a fun fact for you: the couple that witnesses the destruction being wrought by Token Razar in the city street, is like, look, there's some animals knocking down the telephone poles, and the lady is like, they can get their own cab, which is a very Ninja Turtles cartoon joke to make, but apparently that's the director's parents.
Oh, Sophie, some animals are knocking down the telephone poles. What do we do if they come over here?
Let them get their own cab.
The NBA playoffs are almost here. That means the teams are in a final push for seeding or even to make it into the playoffs themselves. And there's no better way to cash in on all the hoops action than on Prize Picks, America's #1 sports pick app. Every bucket, every dime, and every win means more when you're playing on Prize Picks. So don't pass up your next shot with Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Not only that, but as you guys know, Prize Picks also offers esports. So that includes games like League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Valorant, and more. How do you play Prize Picks? Well, all you do is you pick 2 to 6 players and you pick more or less on a certain stat. Now that could mean, say, points in the NHL or NBA, or kills in League of Legends, Counter-Strike, etc. And the more players you pick, the more stats you pick, the more chance you have of winning big. So it's also available in all 50 states in America, so you can get it anywhere in the United States. It's extremely easy to use. So guys, now's your time. You can download the Prize Picks app today and use code NERD, N-E-R-D, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code NERD to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Thank you very much to Prize Picks for sponsoring our show.
In that, they did a great job. His parents have some acting chops. I don't know if they acted outside of that, but great performance.
It's also just a very New York attitude where, the thing about New York City is that there's always something very bizarre going on around you, and you cannot pay attention to it or get involved in it. This is not your business. You just got to move on.
I mean, that's being in LA for as long as I've been now. I feel like that's a thing, especially around Venice. That's the thing.
Yeah,
but
the thing about LA is it's a lot harder because usually this stuff happens like on the subway in New York, and so there's no real way to get away from it.
Yeah. In LA, there's plenty of space to run away.
Whatever is going on is happening, and it's weird, and it's right next to you, and you can't leave quickly.
Well, that just sounds like I'm really missing out, man.
No, it's part of any New Yorker will tell you it's part of the charm of living in New York City. You will be exposed to more weird shit.
I feel like I got a bit of that when I lived in San Francisco for a short time.
Sure.
And I did travel the Muni and the BART a lot, and was witness to many things, and mostly a lot of poop smells coming from the escalators. You know. But it wasn't me. But yeah. So I feel like we lost the plot literally. But where were we? It doesn't really matter. Some ooze out there. Token rods are getting made. Like, we got to stop those guys. They put some ice cubes and donuts, try to feed it to them, doesn't work. They fight, go through a wall, and they end up in a Vanilla Ice concert, which is great, because everybody listened to Vanilla Ice back then. He's kind of a meme now, for legitimate reasons. I think largely because of the rap rock attempt in the late 90s, early 2000s. Yikes. But at that time, he was definitely one of the biggest acts in pop at the time, and so to have him in this movie made a lot of sense. Supposedly, he wrote the Ninja Rap song in about 30 minutes. I memorized the entire thing as a child, and I'm not ashamed to say I knew the choreography. My friends and I loved to Ninja Rap with each other whenever possible. And
I was watching this with my wife, and they busted through the wall, and she just says, "Is that Vanilla Ice?" And I said, "Yeah."
She didn't know. She didn't know.
She knows who Vanilla Ice is. She was like, "Why is Vanilla Ice in this movie?" And I said, "Yes, he's very famously in this movie." In fact,
Monty, down the line, we'll have to watch the movie Cold as Ice, which is the Vanilla Ice crime drama that he did, where he stars in
down.
it. All right, we could do that. I know we're doing the 80s fantasy thing, but I like that we're also sprinkling in some just bizarro 90s films, because that's really, if 80s was all about the wacky fantasy stuff, the 90s was really all about the like bizarro family films and like family adjacent films, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So we'll get to more of those. We've done a couple of them already, but we'll get to more of those too. But anyway, yeah, so they're in the villainized concert, they're fighting each other. They decide putting a fire extinguisher in the mouths of their enemies is what's going to bring them victory, because it accelerates the de-evolution process, or the demutation process, I should say.
Which also sounds suspiciously like the original Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah, a little bit. But the Super Mario Brothers movie came out after this one, though.
Yeah, I'm just
that
saying.
Was 1994. Yeah, so
they
off
share
Ninja Turtles.
Shocking similarities.
Yeah. So anyway, they beat Token Razar. Vanilla Ice. I do like that the promoters backstage are like, oh no, call the police. And then Vanilla Ice starts just like spontaneously rapping about the Ninja Turtles as they fight. And then it shows the backstage shot of the promoters again, and his like lackey runs up to him. He's like, here's the police. And the guy's like, no, what are you talking about? They like it. And so the guy's like, he just gets back on the phone. He's like, never mind, they like it. And he just says it in such a deadpan way. I just love that scene, you know?
They like it.
Okay, they like it.
That he would just be telling the police, like, these monsters are fighting in our Vanilla Ice concert. Like, oh no, don't bother coming. I guess they like it after all. Yeah, and so being the 90s, and you're familiar with this type of thing if you've seen movies like Encino Man, but every early 90s film kind of is obligated to end with a choreographed group dance number, which is what happens after the turtles win the fight. Is the crowd and the turtles start dancing together to the ninja rap, which is where I think all the original Turtles fans probably started vomiting. But like the rest of us, all us kids loved it. And everything was great until Shredder showed up and tried to spray Ooze over that his young hostage.
Which ended shockingly quickly just by turning the music up and blasting him.
Yeah, well, first he's on stage. He's like, oh, you turtles, I really don't like you. And they're like, oh, Shredder. And then, yeah, he takes a hostage. But they kind of just let Kino fall into him. And Shredder's like, oh, I never expected you to just let this kid fall into me. So he loses balance. And that's when Michelangelo blasts him through the wall with the power of a keytar. I'm not making this up. And then they're outside the docks. Shredder's taken the Ooze himself. He becomes Super Shredder, which for some reason also mutates his clothing to be bigger and spikier, which I always kind of wondered about even as a kid back then. But I'm like, it looks cool. Who cares? And then he just pulls down the dock on himself and dies. And that's the end. There's no fight.
It really is anticlimactic because you think the Super Shredder is going to do something, but then he just walks through the piers of a dock and it collapses on him and he dies. And it's such an it's just
evil
such an
is just self-defeating, Monty. We talked about this in the Indiana Jones films. You know, ultimately, evil is self-defeating. You know, you take all the mutagen, you become Super Shredder. You just can't help pulling down a dock on top of yourself to kill yourself. And what I love after that is we have a small moment of worry as a kid. We're like, oh no, what happened to the turtles? But then they're okay. And they're like, man, I love being a turtle. And then Raphael, out of the blue, for no reason at all, says, too bad the Shredder couldn't say the same thing. Raphael, of all turtles, has a moment of remorse over the death of Shredder. And I'm like, where does this come from? Other than the pure, we should all just be friends, kids, message, which, props to them for trying to keep it nice, but it was so out of character for Raphael specifically. That really threw me this time around. I was like, why is he showing remorse for this Shredder's death right now?
And Shredder's only motivation was killing them, by the way.
Yeah. In another little short moment of sanitization you might not have picked up, but in the first movie, the big line, and they had this in trailer, was, God, I love being a turtle. And that upset a lot of people at the time too. And because it was taking the Lord's name in vain, And so at the end,
how quaint. Things have changed so much in 35 years.
How dare the Ninja Turtles do that? This is what the world was like at the time. They're like, how dare the Ninja Turtles do this?
look, I don't understand that at all, but I could understand it maybe a little bit if it was something like, God damn it, I love being a turtle.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just literally being like, God, thanks for making me a turtle.
It seemed fairly
how's
benign.
that offensive?
It seemed fairly benign, but and yet at the end of this, they all together say, "Man, I love being a turtle." So they changed that even just really try to keep everybody happy, I guess. So this movie is really like it's almost like a big apology to all the people that wanted the first one to be a pure, kindergarten age family film, And so like, all right, we're going all out. Not going to use the weapons. Everything's cleaned up. Casey Jones, too scary. Goodbye. That other April O'Neil, too scary. Too serious. Goodbye. So it's yeah. So they really kind of went all the way to the very end with making it family friendly. And despite all that, despite all the craziness around it, I love this movie. I loved watching it again. I love how completely ridiculous and goofy it is. I love
it
the
is very
puppetry.
unapologetic, and I think it just owns what it is.
Exactly,
and it fun.
commits. It commits. Just like One Piece season 2, it commits to exactly what it needs to be to work. And that is something where I feel like the first movie, didn't work as well. And I think you could pretty easily say the first live action Turtles movie was a better movie, but I think this did a better job of committing to the part of the Ninja Turtles universe that it wanted to be, and again, like, I just can't get over how great the puppetry is in this. It's just the suits are just so amazing that I love watching that every time. It's like seeing the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park again, where you're like, it looks so good for the time it was made in. And then in Turtles 3, Turtles in Time, they didn't use the Jim Henson Company for the suits, and man, you could really tell.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It went way downhill.
I don't even know if I've ever seen the third.
I saw it like once, but even back then I was like, yeah, this isn't doing it for me. They go back in time to like feudal Japan. Because why not? Connecting to the ninja roots, I guess. But yeah, it did not do well. So a lot of people have never seen it or just have kind of forgotten about it,
And this movie was very financially successful.
Yes, it was.
Like you opened up by saying it was the second most profitable independent film to date in that time period. That's very
at the time it was made. Yeah. So yeah, hugely successful, and I still think it's the most pure representation of the Ninja Turtles in live action, in my opinion, where it was true to where the majority of the fans were. And the majority of the fans were kids, were fans of the cartoon and fans of the toys, and that's who this movie was for. And it did that great. It did that, so perfectly. You look at the more recent live action Ninja Turtles films, they're like weird CG hunchback monstrosities, I'm like, this just does not look good.
I haven't seen those. So
it's, I watched like one of them on a plane or something like that. And yeah, I mean, you can, of course, the art style in which you depict the Turtles has and can change over time. It has changed a lot over time. The Turtles, even in the cartoon, look way different from the Turtles in the original comics too. But, if you ask somebody, to imagine a Ninja Turtle, they will imagine the cartoon. They're not going to imagine the comics. They're not going to imagine the new live action one. They're going to imagine the cartoon version of it. Right. And so that's what this is. So I feel like it is the most pure representation of like the peak of turtle popularity,
And it's fun to watch, and for an hour and 20 minutes of your life, like,
oh yeah,
it's a good time.
Would you show it to your kids?
Sure.
Yeah, I would too. When my kid's a little bit older, I guess. But yeah, it was good.
All right, well, there you go. 35 years.
Happy 35th anniversary.
Happy
Teenage
35th
Ninja Turtles
anniversary.
released on my birthday. Very appropriate, I think, in a lot of ways.
I agree.
It is a movie that speaks to me. It is me. So happy to talk.
We'll be
about
back next week with some Star Wars Darth Maul, the new television series.
All
so
right.
That'll be a fun one. Back to contemporary media, guys. We'll see you then.